The alien vessel drifted silently through the void, its sleek, obsidian hull reflecting the faint light of distant stars. Inside, the air hummed with the low, resonant frequency of advanced technology, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the very bones of its inhabitants. The crew of the Eclipse, a species known as the Clivarians, moved with precision, their elongated limbs and shimmering, opalescent skin giving them an almost ethereal appearance. They were a race of scientists, explorers, and conquerors, their curiosity matched only by their arrogance. And now they had captured something truly extraordinary. A human. The human, a woman named Dr. Elena Marquez, had been taken during a routine survey mission near the edge of explored space. Her ship, the Odyssey, had been no match for the Clivarians' superior technology. One moment, she was charting a nebula. The next, her sensors screamed with warnings before everything went dark. When she awoke, she found herself in a sterile, hexagonal chamber, its walls pulsing faintly with a bluish light. The air was cool and carried a faint metallic tang, unfamiliar yet not entirely unpleasant. Elena sat up slowly, her mind racing. She was a scientist, a pragmatist, and she knew panic would serve no purpose. Instead, she focused on her surroundings, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. The Clivarians observed her from behind a one-way barrier, their multifaceted eyes studying her with a mixture of fascination and disdain. To them, humans were a primitive species, barely capable of interstellar travel. Yet, there was something about this one, something that made them uneasy. Perhaps it was the way she carried herself, with a quiet confidence that belied her circumstances. Or perhaps it was the stories they had heard, whispers of humanity's resilience and unpredictability. Whatever the reason, they had decided to keep her alive, to study her. They called it an experiment. She called it a prison. Elena's first encounter with her captors was brief but telling. A holographic projection of a Clivarian appeared in her chamber, its voice a series of melodic clicks and hums that her translator struggled to interpret. "You are here for observation," it said finally, the words stilted and cold. "You will remain for 1 billion of your seconds. Do not resist." The projection flickered and vanished before she could respond, leaving her alone once more. 1 billion seconds, 31 years. The enormity of the sentence settled over her like a weight, but she refused to let it crush her. Instead, she began to plan. The hold they had placed her in was a marvel of alien engineering. The walls seemed to shift and change, adapting to her movements in ways she couldn't fully understand. There was no visible door, no obvious means of escape. Yet Elena was undeterred. She spent her first days exploring the chamber, testing its limits. She discovered that the walls responded to touch, their surfaces rippling like water before solidifying again. She found a recessed panel that dispensed a nutrient-rich paste, bland but sustaining. And she noticed the faint hum of machinery, a constant reminder that she was being watched. The Clivarians, for their part, were confident in their control. They had dealt with countless species before, each one eventually broken by the isolation and the futility of resistance. They expected the human to be no different. But as the days turned into weeks, they began to notice small, unsettling changes. The human had started to interact with the hold in ways they hadn't anticipated. She had fashioned tools from the nutrient dispenser, using them to probe the walls and floor. She had begun to mimic their language, piecing together fragments of their speech from the few interactions she had. And she had started to smile, a gesture that, for reasons they couldn't explain, unnerved them. Elena's first major breakthrough came when she discovered a flaw in the hold's design. The walls, while adaptive, had a pattern to their changes, a rhythm that she could predict. By timing her movements carefully, she was able to create a small gap in the wall, just large enough to slip her hand through. Beyond it, she felt the cool metal of a conduit, its surface vibrating with energy. She didn't know what it was connected to, but she knew it was important, and she knew she could use it. The Clivarians, monitoring her every move, were both impressed and alarmed. They had never seen a subject so resourceful, so determined. Some argued that she should be terminated, that she posed too great a risk. Others insisted that she was the most fascinating specimen they had ever encountered, a living testament to the unpredictability of lesser species. In the end, their curiosity won out. They would continue to observe her, but they would also take precautions. They increased the security of the hold, adding new layers of defense to ensure she couldn't escape. What they didn't realize was that Elena wasn't trying to escape. She was trying to take over. By the end of the first year, Elena had mapped the hold systems in her mind, creating a mental blueprint of its weaknesses and vulnerabilities. She had learned to manipulate the environment, using the walls and conduits to her advantage. And she had begun to communicate with the Cliverians, not through words but through actions. Every move she made was a message, a challenge. She was telling them that she was not afraid, that she would not be broken. And they were listening. The section ends with Elena standing in the center of the hold, her eyes fixed on the spot where she knew the Cliverians were watching. She smiled again, a small, knowing smile that sent a shiver through her captors. They had locked her away for 1 billion seconds, but they had underestimated her. And now they were beginning to realize their mistake. The game was far from over, and Elena Marquez was just getting started. The hold had become Elena's world, a labyrinth of shifting walls and hidden systems that she had learned to navigate with the precision of a seasoned explorer. The Cliverians, confident in their technological superiority, had underestimated her ability to adapt. But as the months turned into years, their confidence began to waver. Elena was no longer just a prisoner. She was a force of nature, a storm contained within their carefully constructed cage. And storms, as they were beginning to learn, have a way of breaking free. Elena's first major act of defiance came when she managed to disable the hold surveillance system, or at least the part of it that monitored her directly. It was a subtle move, one that went unnoticed at first. She had spent weeks studying the patterns of the Cliverians' monitoring, noting the intervals at which they checked the feeds and the blind spots in their coverage. Using a makeshift tool fashioned from a piece of the nutrient dispenser, she accessed a conduit in the wall and rerouted a critical data stream. The Cliverians continued to receive footage of her, but it was a looped recording, one that showed her sitting quietly in the center of the hold, seemingly docile. In reality, she was anything but. With the surveillance system compromised, Elena began to explore the hold in earnest. She discovered a network of conduits that ran beneath the floor, carrying energy and data to various parts of the ship. She also found a series of access points that, with the right tools, could be used to interface with the ship's main systems. The Cliverians had designed the hold to be impenetrable, but they had not accounted for the ingenuity of a human mind. Elena was a scientist, a problem solver, and she approached her imprisonment as a puzzle to be solved. Piece by piece, she began to unravel the secrets of the hold. The Cliverians, for their part, were growing increasingly uneasy. They had expected Elena to break under the weight of her isolation, to succumb to despair or madness. Instead, she had become more focused, more determined. They could see it in the way she moved, in the way she studied her surroundings with a predator's intensity. She was no longer just a subject of their experiment. She was a threat, and yet, they could not bring themselves to terminate her. There was something about her, something that fascinated them even as it terrified them. Elena's next move was bolder. Using the access points she had discovered, she began to infiltrate the ship systems. It was a slow process, one that required patience and precision. She had to be careful not to trigger any alarms, not to alert the Cliverians to what she was doing. But she was nothing if not patient. Over the course of several months, she gained access to the ship's environmental controls, its communication systems, and even its navigation. She didn't take control of these systems, not yet. Instead, she observed, learning how they worked and how they could be manipulated. The Cliverians, meanwhile, were beginning to notice anomalies. Systems would behave erratically, responding to commands that no one had given. Data streams would mysteriously reroute themselves, only to return to normal moments later. At first, they dismissed these incidents as glitches, the inevitable result of running a complex system for so long. But as the anomalies became more frequent, they began to suspect the truth. Elena was behind it. She was infiltrating their systems, and they had no idea how to stop her. Their unease turned to outright fear when Elena made her first direct move. One day, without warning, the hold's walls shifted, revealing a hidden passageway that led deeper into the ship. The Cliverians, monitoring the situation from their control room, were stunned. They had no idea how she had done it, but there was no denying the truth. Elena had found a way out, and she was coming for them. The passageway led to a series of maintenance tunnels, narrow and dimly lit. Elena moved through them with the confidence of someone who had spent years studying her environment. She knew where she was going, and she knew what she would do when she got there. The Cliverians, scrambling to respond, sent a team of guards to intercept her. But Elena was ready. Using the ship's environmental controls, she created a diversion, flooding the tunnels with a harmless but disorienting gas. The guards, caught off guard, were easily subdued. By the time Elena reached the control room, the Cliverians were in a state of panic. They had never faced a threat like this before, and they had no idea how to respond. Elena, on the other hand, was calm and focused. She had spent years preparing for this moment, and she was not about to let it slip away. With a few quick commands, she took control of the ship systems, locking the Cliverians out of their own network. They were powerless to stop her. The section ends with Elena standing in the control room, her eyes fixed on the Cliverians. They were no longer her captors. They were her prisoners, and she had a message for them. "You locked me away for 1,000,000,000 seconds," she said, her voice calm but firm. "But you forgot one thing. Humans don't break. We adapt. And now it's your turn to adapt." The Cliverians, their multifaceted eyes wide with fear, could only watch as Elena took control of their ship. The game was far from over, but the balance of power had shifted, and Elena Marquez was just getting started. The control room of the Eclipse was a stark contrast to the sterile, hexagonal hold Elena had called home for years. Here, the walls were alive with swirling holographic displays, their colors shifting in patterns that seemed almost alive. The air was thick with the hum of machinery, a constant reminder of the ship's immense power. And at the center of it all stood Elena, her presence commanding despite her small stature. The Cliverians, their opalescent skin dulled by fear, watched her from the periphery, their multifaceted eyes wide with a mixture of awe and dread. They had never imagined that their experiment would lead to this. A human standing at the helm of their most advanced vessel, her every move calculated and precise. Elena's first act as the de facto commander of the Eclipse was to secure the ship. Using the access she had gained over the years, she locked down all critical systems, ensuring that the Cliverians could not regain control. She then turned her attention to the crew, her sharp eyes scanning the room as she assessed their reactions. Some of the Cliverians were visibly terrified, their elongated limbs trembling as they huddled together. Others, however, regarded her with a grudging respect, their curiosity outweighing their fear. Elena knew that she would need their cooperation if she was to succeed, and she was prepared to offer them a choice. "You have two options," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You can either work with me, or you can spend the rest of this journey in the hold. The choice is yours." The Cliverians exchanged uneasy glances, their melodic language filling the air as they debated their options. In the end, most of them chose to cooperate. They had seen what Elena was capable of, and they knew better than to challenge her. With the crew subdued, Elena turned her attention to the ship's systems. She spent hours poring over the holographic displays, her mind racing as she absorbed the vast amount of information at her fingertips. The Eclipse was a marvel of alien engineering, its technology far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. But Elena was a quick study, and it wasn't long before she had a working understanding of the ship's capabilities. She knew that she could use this technology to her advantage, but she also knew that she would need to be careful. The Cliverians were still a threat, and she couldn't afford to let her guard down. As the days turned into weeks, Elena began to implement her plan. Her first priority was to establish communication with Earth. Using the ship's advanced communication systems, she sent a series of encrypted messages, each one carefully crafted to avoid detection by any hostile forces. She knew that it would take time for her messages to reach their destination, but she was willing to wait. In the meantime, she focused on consolidating her control over the eclipse. The Cliverians, for their part, were adjusting to their new reality. Many of them had come to respect Elena, her intelligence and resourcefulness earning their grudging admiration. Others, however, remained wary, their fear of the unknown keeping them at a distance. Elena understood their apprehension, and she made no effort to force them into compliance. Instead, she focused on building alliances with those who were willing to work with her, using their knowledge of the ship to her advantage. One of her most valuable allies was a Cliverian scientist named Zanara. Unlike the others, Zanara had always been fascinated by humanity, and she had been one of the few to argue against Elena's imprisonment. Now, she saw an opportunity to learn from the human, and she was eager to assist. Together, Elena and Zanara worked to unlock the full potential of the eclipse, their collaboration yielding results that neither of them could have achieved alone. As the weeks turned into months, Elena's control over the ship became absolute. She had transformed the eclipse into a fortress, its systems optimized for both defense and exploration. She had also begun to explore the ship's vast database, uncovering secrets that the Cliverians had kept hidden for centuries. Among these secrets was the location of a nearby star system, one that held the key to humanity's survival. Elena knew that she had to investigate, but she also knew that it would be a dangerous journey. The section ends with Elena standing on the bridge of the eclipse, her eyes fixed on the swirling holographic display that showed the star system ahead. The Cliverians, now fully integrated into her crew, watched her with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. They knew that the journey ahead would be fraught with danger, but they also knew that they had no choice but to follow her. Elena, for her part, felt a sense of purpose that she hadn't felt in years. She had been locked away for a billion seconds, but she had emerged stronger, more determined than ever. And now, with the eclipse at her command, she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The game was far from over, and Elena Marquez was just getting started.